Transnistria is a territory that stretches approximately 400 kilometers in length and 35 kilometers in width, and is populated mainly by Russians and Ukrainians. This region was historically part of the Bessarabia region, which is now split between the Republic of Moldova and Ukraine. However, due to population movements during the Soviet era, the ethnic makeup of the region changed to one of a Russo-Ukrainian majority, which led to the breakout of the 1992 Transnistria War. This conflict is widely believed to have been sparked by Transnistria's resistance to the idea of a union between Romania and Moldova. The conflict arose from a complex history, ethnic differences, and foreign involvement, and led to violence in a region that had been peaceful for many years prior. 4 nation-building efforts were at the heart of this war. The Moldovan government's pursuit of an independent state upon leaving the Soviet Union, the Russian state's struggle for influence in its periphery, Romania's attempt to become a free market democracy, and the Transnistria's aspiration for statehood, which resulted in its de facto autonomy from Moldova. Formed in the final years of the Soviet Union, Transnistria, which is often referred to by its official name, the Pridnestrovian Moldovan Republic, is a thin 400-kilometer long strip of land located adjacent to the Dniester River. As its name implies in Moldovan, Transnistria refers to the area on the far eastern and left side of the river. Before the creation of the Moldovan SSR, today's Transnistria was part of the Ukrainian SSR as an autonomous republic called the Moldovan Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic, with Tiraspol as its capital. Transnistria was a consciously established, mainly Russian-speaking, to be an industrial center in the otherwise agriculturally dominated and underdeveloped Moldovan SSR. The Moldavian Soviet Socialist Republic was composed of 2 distinct groups, one consisting of a largely rural Moldovan and native population found primarily in Bessarabia and employed in agriculture and light agro-industry, and the other a more urban, Slavic, and largely immigrant population of Transnistria that worked in Soviet-style heavy industry. Division became entrenched in Moldova, 2 elites, each with opposing views, competing for resources from Moscow. The right-bank elite spoke the same language as Romania, while the left-bank elite championed Russification. This tension still exists today, with Chisinau referring to Transnistria as a neo-Soviet regime, and the latter calling reunification efforts attempts to attach to a broken car. At the time of Perestroika, the Moldovan nationalists in Chisinau declared their nationalism and started to distance themselves from Moscow. This was met with resistance from the pro-Russian elite in Transnistria, who declared their autonomy and affirmed their loyalty to Moscow. In response to this, the Supreme Soviet of Moldova adopted 3 language laws that declared Moldovan as the state language, which the Transnistrians saw as a threat to their rights. As a result, in the autumn of 1990, Tiraspol reaffirmed its allegiance to Soviet structures and policies. When the Soviet Union collapsed at the end of 1991, Moldova became an independent state, making the Transnistrians separatists. To get to this point in the history of Transnistria, we have to travel back in time to the 1800s. The region served as a border between empires, and due to this fact suffered many times from the negative effects of conquerors and wars. The biggest influence on the split nation was Russia and Romania. The former is due to its imperialist ambitions, while the latter is simply on the fact of geographical proximity. It is no surprise that the 2 biggest foreign involvers in the Transnistria War were the newly formed Russia Federation and the post-communist Romania. The dream of reunification between Romania and Moldova has long been at the core of Romanian aspirations. Upon entering World War I, Romania annexed the territories of Transylvania, Bukovina, and Bessarabia. Representatives from the latter two territories decided to become part of Romania in 1918. Romania's greatest territorial extent in history was achieved in 1918 to 1940, seen by many as a golden age due to industrialization. This reunification, known as Romania Mare or Greater Romania, served as a cornerstone of Romanian national identity and remains a powerful symbol in the national mythos. Bessarabia seceded to the Soviet Union under the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. This is seen by pro-Russians as legal evidence of the separation between Romania and Moldova. In interwar Romania, internal developments led to the disastrous reign of King Carol II. Romania then sided with the Axis in World War II, forced to return northern Transylvania to Hungary and eastern regions to the Soviet Union. Iron Guard rose to power, and Ion Antonescu was appointed as the de facto head of state. His regime carried out the genocide against Jews and Gypsies, and took part in Hitler's Operation Barbarossa. Romania was granted control over Bessarabia and a Soviet territory, which became the Transnistrian Governorate. At the conclusion of World War II, Romania ceded Bessarabia, the Transnistrian Governorate, and northern Bukovina to the Soviet Union per the Treaty of Paris in 1947. Romania has not been subject to any further territorial changes since this agreement. The aforementioned regions were part of the Soviet Union until 1991, when Moldova and Ukraine both achieved independence. It is important to recognize that the history of this area has seen three important international agreements that are used to either bolster Moldovan sovereignty or challenge Romania's right to control areas outside its current eastern border. These are the Treaty of Bucharest in 1812, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact in 1939, and the 1947 Treaty of Paris. To understand the ethnic dynamics of Moldova, it's necessary to first explain the elements that constitute Romanian, Moldovan, and Transnistrian identity. These identities have been essential in creating the region's history, leading to the Transnistrian War and the involvement of both Romania and Russia. Romanian identity is rooted in its language, which was created through Romanization in the 2nd century. This legacy has been used by Romanian political and intellectual elites to define a national identity that focuses heavily on language as a distinguisher from non-Romanians. The lands historically populated by Romanian speakers were often seen as Romanian territories, even if they had never been part of a Romanian state. This was especially true during the 19th century, when Moldova, Dobruja, and Wallachia, the Banat, and Transylvania were under the control of the Ottoman, Austro-Hungarian, and Russian empires, respectively. Consequently, Romania has historically been driven to gain control of these territories, which has been seen by some as Romanian imperialism. However, this strategy was hindered by the presence of diverse ethnic and linguistic groups in these regions, including Romani people, Jews and Greeks in Romanian towns and cities, Bulgarians, Turks, and Tartars in Dobruja, Hungarians and Germans in Transylvania, Ukrainians, Russians, and Gagas in Moldova and Bessarabia. The ethnic composition of Romania changed drastically during World War II, with Jews, Roma, and Slavs being killed or fleeing the country by the Iron Guard regime. Following the war, the Jewish population had almost been wiped out, and Germans were forced to leave. Communist Romania enforced a policy of homogenization by assimilation until the fall of Ceausescu in 1989. Meanwhile, Soviet Bessarabia saw a large influx of Russian settlers and the promotion of the Russian language in schools, leading to a demographic shift in Moldova. Eastern Moldova, east of the Dniester, had a Russian influence from its past, as a part of Imperial Russia and the USSR. Over time, as a member of the USSR, Moldova became more Slavic and Russian. Romania, however, maintained its own identity as a member of the Warsaw Pact, resulting in the emergence of a Moldovan identity distinct from a Romanian one. A debate exists on the degree of difference between Romania and Moldova. Romanian nationalists argue that the Moldovan language is virtually identical to Romanian, while Moldovan nationalists point to the region's distinct history. Soviet policies and World War II-induced population changes have also led to a large number of ethnic Russians in Moldova, making up a majority in Transnistria. After the fall of communism in Romania, there was a period of political instability due to the sudden transition from the rule of Nicolae Ceausescu. Under Ceausescu's rule, the country experienced a period of modernization and relative prosperity. However, the economy began to falter due to the regime's focus on paying off the foreign debt, leading to an economic recession, poverty, and hunger. This was exacerbated by the lavish lifestyles of Ceausescu, communist leaders, and the secret police, which caused widespread resentment among the Romanian people. In the 1980s, support for Nicolae Ceausescu's regime began to wane. In December 1989, a popular uprising in the western city of Timisoara, led by a Hungarian Catholic cleric, broke out in protest of the regime. This revolution eventually reached the capital city of Bucharest on December 21st, when Ceausescu called for a rally of over 100,000 people. This failed to quell the uprising, and the assembled crowd turned against him. On Christmas Day, Nicolae Ceausescu and his wife, Elena Ceausescu, were executed by firing squad after being found guilty of several crimes by a military tribunal made up of Romanian government personnel. This event was broadcast on national television and marked the end of the Romanian Revolution. It wasn't until the late 2000s that the Romanian state was considered a functioning democracy, largely due to the influence of the European Union. During this time of transition, Romania was largely focused on maintaining stability, rather than pursuing any grandiose political goals like reunification with Moldova. This was complicated by the fact that Romania had just gone through a civil war, as well as the fact that the Romanian government was too fractured to be considered a unitary actor. Given Romania's recent experience with civil conflict and its fragile political standing, it is understandable why it offered only minimal support to the Moldovan government in the 1990s. The Romanian political elite was likely aware of the potential for a revival of internal strife in Romania should they intervene in the Transnistrian conflict. So it is unsurprising that the official Romanian position was that both countries should prioritize their own internal development before discussing a possible political union. Between 1989 and 1991, the Warsaw Pact began to dissolve as Poland, East Germany, Romania, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and Bulgaria broke away from the Soviet Union. This transition period marked a shift from a bipolar world to a unipolar world, with the Soviet Union no longer holding superpower status. As a result, the Commonwealth of Independent States was established in an attempt to keep some degree of Russian influence over the former Soviet republics. This desire for control is thought to be the underlying cause of many post-Soviet conflicts, such as the Transnistrian War, Georgia, and the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. On 31st August 1989, the Supreme Soviet of the Moldovan SSR released two laws. The first stated that Moldovan would be the official language instead of Russian, the language previously used by the Soviet Union. It also declared that the Moldo-Romanian identity should be prioritized. The second law established that the Latin Romanian alphabet should be used. On 27 April 1990, the Supreme Soviet of the Moldovan SSR adopted the tricolor flag, blue, yellow, and red, with the Moldovan coat of arms, and the national anthem was changed to Despărtate Române, which had been Romania's national anthem since 1990. Later in 1990, the words Soviet and Socialist were dropped, and the country's name was changed to Republic of Moldova. With the end of the Ceausescu regime in Romania in December 1989 and the opening of the border between Romania and Moldova on 6 May 1990, many inhabitants of Transnistria and Moldova thought a union between Moldova and Romania was inevitable. This caused fear among the Russian-speaking population that they would be excluded from public life. Starting in September 1989, protests began against the government's ethnic policies. These protests developed into movements in Gagauzia and Transnistria that desired autonomy within the Moldovan SSR in order to keep Russian as an official language. When the Moldovan Supreme Soviet prohibited such initiatives, the Gagauz Republic and Transnistria declared their independence from Moldova and announced their desire to be reattached to the Soviet Union. The Pridnestrovian Moldovan Soviet Socialist Republic was declared. 2 months later, on 22nd December 1990, Transnistria became one of the unrecognized republics alongside Abkhazia, South Ossetia, and Nagorno-Karabakh, who all had close ties with each other. Following the failed Soviet coup of 1991, the Republic of Moldova declared their independence on 27 August, citing the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact as null and void, and viewing the establishment of the Moldovan SSR as having no legal basis. This was interpreted by separatists as the dissolution of the 1940 merger of the two sides of the Dniester River, which Moldova disagreed with, citing the fact that large parts of the historical Transnistria territory had remained in Ukraine. In the absence of an army, the Moldovan government asked for negotiations with the former USSR in order to secure the withdrawal of Soviet troops from Moldovan territory. In parallel to this, the Moldovan government began to create their own army,